Okay, second.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Need a motion to go into closed meeting for the following reasons. It would be under section 2.23711, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, discipline, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. 1, Board of Zoning Appeals. 2, Economic Development Authority. And 3, RC and D. Do we have a motion?
Have a motion.
Motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
6 ayes.
We are now in closed session.
I have to get back up.
Call the meeting back to order. I need a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Well, certification of the closed meeting, whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative record vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.23711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia, hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting, to which the certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Lettuce.
Old habits are.
I guess old habits are hard to break, right? Yeah. But hopefully, we'll help you break it. Okay. Aye.
Only counts in horseshoes.
It only counts in horseshoes and bombs and grenades. Yeah. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our invocation. This is where we observe a moment of silence to reflect on the business at hand and just reflect on things in general. You can reflect in any manner that you see fit. After the invocation, Mr. Meadows will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Our next item on the agenda is a couple presentations, or several presentations, and our first one is a resolution of appreciation. Will be presented to former Mayor Richard Valentine for his years of service to the town of Christiansburg. If the mayor would come forward, we'd like to come down and present you with this resolution and also have a picture taken with you. Yeah, this pretty short prior to Al serving when he left. So I'm going to read this. Here it is. At a regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Montgomery, Virginia, held on the 16th day of December 2013 at 7 p.m. in the Board Chambers, Montgomery County Government Center, 755 Roanoke Street, Christiansburg, Virginia. Resolution of appreciation, Mayor Richard Ballinger. Whereas Richard Ballinger has served the citizens of Christiansburg since he was elected to serve as a member of Christiansburg Town Council in 1996 and served on the town council through 2004. And whereas Mayor Ballinger was elected to serve as mayor of Christiansburg from 2006 through 2013, whereas Mayor Richard Ballinger's outstanding leadership contributed to the rapid growth and increased prosperity experienced by the Christiansburg community, which has evolved into a dynamic retail hub for the New River Valley. And whereas accomplishments during his years as a member of the Christiansburg Town Council as the Christiansburg Mayor included the Christiansburg Aquatic Center, Council 2020 Vision, joined the study, Montgomery County joining the New River NRV Water Authority, establishment of the Regional 911 Authority, the Heart Rate Sports Complex, expansion of the Huckleberry Trail, and numerous water and sewer infrastructure improvements. The members of this body, and in particular those who work closely with him on so many local government matters, recognize that his thoughtful and thorough consideration of issues rightfully earn the respect and trust of this body. And whereas Richard Ballinger has announced his retirement from public service, and it is fitting and proper that he be recognized for his dedication and leadership to Montgomery County and the Christiansburg community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia, on behalf of the entire citizenship, expresses its appreciation and gratitude to Richard Ballinger for his outstanding dedication to the Christiansburg community and the citizens of Montgomery County, and congratulate him upon the occasion of his retirement and offer sincere best wishes for continued health and happiness. Be it resolved that the original of this resolution be presented to Richard Ballinger and that a copy be a part of the official minutes of Montgomery County. Christiansburg community, but your leadership went far beyond the Christiansburg town limits, went far beyond Montgomery County, and they can be felt throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. We wish you the very best. Yeah, come on up and so we can get it.
Thank you for your service. It has been more than a pleasure.
Well, with your experience, we have plenty of boards and commissions. If you get bored and Joanne and your wife doesn't run out of things for you to do, you get commissions that you go.
As long as I don't have to be elected.
Instead of going back up, we're going to present two more while we're down here, and we don't have to be track stars going back and forth going back. The next resolution we have is from is for a person who I've known for many, many years and have the highest respect for. Not that I don't have high respect for Mr. Ballinger, but I really have high respect for this young lady right here. Phyllis Albright.
This young lady.
Phyllis and I go back, I don't know how many years. How many years?
Oh, at least 30, very, very well.
Yeah, I was just a mere child.
Me too.
Okay. At a regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Montgomery, Virginia, held on the 13th day of January 2014 at 7:30 p.m. in the Board Chambers, Montgomery County Government Center, 755 Roanoke Street, Christiansburg, Virginia. Resolution of appreciation, Montgomery County School Board, Phyllis T. Allredden. Whereas Phyllis T. Allredden has faithfully served as a member of the Montgomery County School Board from September 2007 through December 31st, 2013. And whereas her years of service have been marked by her dedication to the interest of the students who attend the Montgomery County Public Schools, and the members of the Board of Supervisors recognize the enormous responsibility undertaken by the members of the Montgomery County School Board. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia, on behalf of the entire citizenship, extends a unanimous vote of appreciation and gratitude to Phyllis T. Allredden for her outstanding public service. Be it further resolved that the original of this resolution be presented to Phyllis T. Allredden and that a copy be a part of the official minutes of Montgomery County. Thank you. You don't got
Hugs now?
Yeah, hugs too.
Yeah, sure.
We get ready to take a picture. Take a picture.
Bless you.
I mean, you can if you want to. It's just a
Okay, next presentation. The Montgomery County Purchasing Department. Oh, that's right. I think Heather came, that other lady came to keep Heather out of trouble.
Jessica always.
Yeah, that's good. Montgomery County Purchasing Department, the fourth consecutive Outstanding Agency Accreditation Achievement Award. And I'm going to read the way it is. It said, will be presented to the Montgomery County Purchasing Department. The accreditation recognizes public procurement excellence by measuring agency procurement practices against recommended practices and procedures for a sound purchasing operation. Only 127 governments in the United States and Canada have achieved this status. The accreditations are for 3-year periods. Montgomery County was originally accredited in 2004 and completed successful reaccreditation in 2007, 2010, and 2013. So, Heather and Jessica, we say congratulations. Man. It's almost like a Super Bowl thing. Last night. So we'd like to present you Certificate of Achievement, having demonstrated excellence in the public procurement through the accomplishments of rigorous standards and best practices, NIGP, the Institute of Public Procurement, is hereby honored and privileged to recognize Montgomery County, Virginia, through this Outstanding Agency Accreditation Achievement Award. Now, you guys got to come up and take a picture of this certificate. One of you. If you're strong enough. Use it.
I want to see how happy you are.
Thank you for your service. Done excellent.
Wow. Yeah. Something. What do you think it's going to be with it? We put it on from cool. Well, then that's and you can use it. Yeah. Right.
We should very best.
Yeah. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's nice. It's good to watch them happy. You might have seen
Oh, yeah, it's cool.
Oh, I thought he was getting too hot over there.
Okay, next on our agenda are delegations, and the first one, our comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2013. And John Allridge with Brown, Edwards and Company, LLP, will present Montgomery County's comprehensive annual financial report.
All right. Well, thank you all for having me tonight, and you know, I can stay around and take my picture too when we're done. We can do that.
Might do
But in front of you, you should have the financial report. It's probably on your iPads, but it's a little bit easier if you actually go through the document there. That's the large bound document. And I will, what I'm going to do is just hit a few of the highlights, and as always, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. One of the things I always want to mention to you is that this audit includes not only the county, but also the EDA, and also includes the schools as well as the water and sewer. So all of that's encompassed in this audit. And so when I mention certain things that are included in this report, if you have the report and you flip over a few pages to page number 1, you'll see the Brown Edwards logo at the top, and it says Independent Auditor's Report. This looks a little bit different than in the past. There's a thing that came out called the Clarified Standards that wanted to add a little clarity to these reports to highlight whose responsibility certain sections were, and that's why this looks a little bit different. But on page number 1, on the Independent Auditor's Report, you want to look at the last paragraph where it says opinions. It says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above were sent fairly. What this is an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion, the highest level of assurance that we will put on a financial report. So once again, the county has a clean opinion. All right. Starting on page 3A, we have the management's discussion and analysis. Some nice summary there of the things that happened this past year at the county. Those 8 pages or so are there for a reader just to kind of to get a real good flavor and not have to dig any further. Your staff writes this, and they did a really good job writing it this year. Okay, starting on page number 7, I'm going to skip over a few things, and if I skip over something you want to talk about, please stop me. So on page 7, we've got the balance sheet of governmental funds, and you'll notice 2 things there. We've got our general fund, and then we have the county capital improvements fund. All right. Just point out to you the fund balance section down at the bottom. Your fund balance for the general fund for the year ended was $43,693,687. For the county capital improvements, it had a remaining fund balance of $60,069,000. If you flipped over 2 pages to page number 9, you can see the actual revenues and expenditures for each of those this past year. Would point out to you, if you'll notice, on the county capital improvements column, there was $74 million this past year of expenditures. Again, the bulk of that's going to be Blacksburg, Haskell, and Auburn. That's going to take up the bulk of that, $74 million. Further detail that's shown on, I think, page 3D in the front. All right. Flip over a few more pages, you go to page number 13, and we have the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund net position for the proprietary funds. And you notice this is the water and wastewater. They're called business type activities because the thought is we have user fees in place to cover the cost. They're not paid for by tax revenue. You'll notice for the year the change in net position, which is akin to the net income, for the water was $476,000, for wastewater $378,000. Okay. On page 14, you have the cash flow statement. This takes all this information I mentioned and looks at it just from a purely checkbook perspective. The section you would want to focus in on would be the top section, which would be operating activities. And what this simply says is after we've paid our operating costs, whether it be salaries, treatment, those type things of water, what did we have left over from operations? And you'll notice that the water generated positive cash flow of $347,000, wastewater $109,000. Okay. Then we have on page 15 the notes to financial statements. Most of these are similar to what you've seen in the past. I just want to point a couple of those out to you. On page 33, the note there is on capital assets. The top of page 33, you can see what has been spent to date on the various projects. And you can also see the remaining balance. And this was as of June 30th, what was left to be spent on those particular projects. One page over on page 34, you can see the long-term debt, the financing that was issued to pay for these and other projects over the years. And again, that's broken out to two categories. You've got governmental activities, that's your tax-based stuff, and then you've got the business type activities that again would be the water and wastewater. In more detail on that is if you flip the pages through, you can see the various issues. Okay. On the back of the report, starting about page 50, we have the school board information, and you can see that there are two columns there, the operating column and the cafeteria. And you'll notice on page 51, the revenues for school operations were $93 million. The bulk of that's intergovernmental, which would be state and federal, and then local, what the county also sent. Those revenues would show up there. That's $92 million. Expenditures, $93 million. And you can see the categories there. You know, the bulk of that is going to be instruction. Okay. On page number 54, one of the things we have to do when we come out and do your audit, we have to look at the federal money that passes through the county. And this is not only the county, but the school system as well. And this is what's known as a single audit. So we have to test the federal money that comes through, and we have to test approximately 50% of those dollars. So the expenditures that come through the county, we have to look at 50%. You had right at $9.5 million this past year of federal expenditures. Again, the bulk of that's going to be school related. You can see the various programs there. I'm pleased to tell you in testing these, there were no compliance findings. Everything we tested was clean, and there's nothing to report to you on that. So again, no findings at all from the federal testing that we did. And the last thing I want to point out to you, I find it very helpful. I enjoy looking at this. On page 60, we can look at the general fund and the governmental funds. This would also include capital projects for the last 10 years to give you a sense of what has transpired in the county over those years. And you will notice there's going to be peaks and valleys in here. For example, if you looked at the 2013 column, total expenditures were $179 million. Well, again, that's a little bit higher than the prior year, and that's primarily related to the capital projects. If you notice, that went from $40 million the year before to $74 million this year. The third line from the bottom, or the second line from the bottom, the net change in fund balance, you can see that was a negative this year, $70 million. Last year was a positive $78 million. What that's simply saying is we had the debt money last year, we're spending it this year. So it's just when the money comes in, it's shown as a revenue. When the debt's issued, and now we're starting to spend that. So that's why you see such a swing between this year and last year. But again, those statistical stuff in the back, I would encourage you to look at that. It talks about the principal employers this year comparing to 9 years ago in the county. the largest taxpayers this year compared to 9 years ago. So I would encourage you to look at that information. But again, I just want to point out, you did get a clean audit. The federal testing, there are no findings at all. And be happy to answer any questions y'all might have there.
Questions, board members? Comments, board members?
I think we need to say to our finance director and our budget director and say, boy, good job. Well done.
Thank you. It's a lot of work on staff, and I certainly
Yes, it
appreciate
is.
all the work that Angie and Mark and the entire department do. It's a true team effort, and
That's great.
I'm sorry, John, that we're not going to come down and take a picture with you guys, but we thank you, and we're proud of the staff that's present here.
well, if we come down and make your picture, that might impair your independence. That might be an audit finding, so we better not.
Don't do it. It's never good to get the picture with the auditor. So all right, so thank y'all.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's time for us to get an update on our public safety building. Ronald, I can't put, how you pronounce that last name? Requelme. Okay, I'll try not to. I reached my ass, I didn't want to chop it up,
Well, and I want to say, too, Steve Phillips was going to be here tonight, but Steve made it to work this morning and turned right around and went home. We've got a bug that's still circulating through the building, and he found it this morning.
He can keep it, too.
Yes, he can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be as brief as I can. My first slide goes over the project schedule. The project official start date was May the 9th of 2013. There have been 34 days of time extension granted to the contractor, and that results in a final completion date of September 5th of this year. Currently, the general contractor schedule shows that they're going to complete the project on time. I'm a little concerned about that. They initially told us that they'd have the building envelope completed by Christmas of 2013. And they just did start working on the roof of the building on the 16th of January. So they're probably 30 days, well, they're more than 30 days because they want it to be completed by then. So I hope that in the spring that we'll have favorable weather and they'll be able to catch up and complete on time. I think it is possible because even though the building envelope is behind schedule, they did start working on some of the components inside the building ahead of their schedule. Nothing that's going to be harmed by the adverse weather, but like the steel stud wall framing and some of the electrical rough-in and some of the ducts. So they're ahead of schedule on some of that. So hopefully they will complete on the 5th of September. My next slide is about construction costs. The original contract amount was $8,175,000. There have been 21 change orders to date, totaling almost $500,000. And of course, I mentioned the 34-day time extension that they've been granted. Of that $500,000 changes, 4 changes are about 2/3 of that, about $340,000. And those significant changes are the wire mesh shades of the canopy. And that, technically it is a change order, but that was an alternate at bid time. And I guess to get the project started, we put the contract together without that, and then opted to go ahead and include that. The next one is patching the existing fireproofing. Once they began the demolition, it was pretty obvious that the fireproofing inside the building needed to be repaired. The next one is some miscellaneous electrical changes. And those are due mostly to making, I guess, there were some owner-initiated changes, and that was part of that. And then the final of those 4 is some miscellaneous architectural changes. And again, those were changes that were needed to make the building more functional for the sheriff's office and the 911 dispatch center.
And Ronnie, a good point there is anytime you're doing a renovation project like we're doing, basically stripping it down to the steel and going back, things like the fireproofing, you didn't know till you got the building stripped down that it needed repairs. And then as the sheriff's department and the 911 folks have continued to study the plans as things are coming back, some things have had to be moved around, and that's what generated some of those change orders.
Good. Well, who's responsible for the wire mesh not getting in there?
It was bid out. It was part of the original bid, but it was bid as an option. But we wanted to get the contract awarded to get the project moving, and then the architect continued to evaluate. Can you go back to the very first slide, Ronnie, because it shows under the canopy in the front, can you see the screening? Mm-hmm. And then if you look in the upper windows, there's some screening as well. That's actually a wire mesh type. And what it is it's a solar reflectant, because if you're familiar with that building, that side of that building catches most of the midday and afternoon sun. It's actually a thermal thing. But when it was initially in the bid, there was a lot of question about, well, what's going to look like, and we decided to go ahead and award the board awarded the contract with that as an alternate, and then once we finally got a good comfort feel for the meshing, we added it to it. So it could have been awarded originally, but we decided to do it as a change order.
I just know that it was a big dollar item, and
yeah, it was. We could have held the contract up till we reviewed it and then awarded the contract with it, but in order to get Thor moved, they wanted to get moving to start the demolition work. We went ahead and it didn't cost us any more by doing it as a change order. They didn't add any markup on it after the fact. It was an option.
It didn't cost any more to.
No, that change order was for the amount that was included in the bid as an alternate, so they didn't mark it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. My next slide is about the overall project budget, and on this slide I've got 3 columns. The first column is the original budget presented by Wiley and Wilson in September of 2012. The second column is the budget that I presented to the board at the April 8th meeting. And then the third column is the budget that I'm going to present this evening. The first section, we've already discussed the building construction and the change orders, and if you'll notice that down at the very bottom we had the project contingency at $800,000, and now it's $300,000, so I simply have taken the $500,000 out of that contingency, so that's really not any change. The next group of numbers is the biggest change. The first 2 budgets had we're carrying $820,000 for the furniture, equipment, and moving costs, and that number goes all the way back to the early Mosley schematic budget, and it was not updated, and it should have been reevaluated and wasn't. The numbers that are there, the $1.1 million for the furniture and equipment is we've been working since about May with a furniture design team, and they've given us this value as a budget. It does include a 10% contingency. They think that the furniture will probably be closer to $1 million instead of $1,130,000. The next number is the building technology. That's the phones and the computers in the building, and the Montgomery County's IT department will be providing those, and they've studied the quantities of phones and computers at this point and give us a value of $350,000 for that. The last budget, the last item there is equipment that is for the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. It includes a fume hood, a safe, some evidence dryers, and those kind of various items. It also includes the interview recording equipment that will record the interviews that take place in there, and it also includes the distributed antenna system. That's an antenna system that allows the sheriff's radios to communicate while they're inside the building. The testing inspection fees, I'm still carrying the same numbers, but currently we've spent about $10,000 on that, and I'd be surprised if that number actually doubled. So hopefully we'll realize some savings in that category. The AE fees are about $135,000 higher than they were, and that is to account for $100,000 of that accounts for incorporating the design changes that occurred just after the project got underway, and $35,000 is for commissioning. That's for the commissioning mechanical systems in the building. And the resident project representative, that's essentially me. The difference in the numbers there was the earlier budgets anticipated the completion of the project April 1st of this year, and I'm projecting that I'll be through the end of this year by the time that the furniture is put in and the project is complete and the sheriff's office moves in.
And just to clarify that one, that doesn't all go to you. That's we employ Arcadis as the oversight group, and Ronnie's their field rep for that. So hopefully you get some of that.
Yeah, I get some of that.
Good. Okay.
Not anywhere close. So, unfortunately, the budget that I'm presenting tonight is about $700,000 in the budget that I presented in April 2013, but we're still over $2 million below the budget that was presented by Wiley & Wilson in September of 2012.
And that's the number we've tried to keep a focus on as well, because again, we knew when we went into the project, again, when you take a building down to its bones and start putting it back together, we knew there were going to be some things that would pop up, and that's the reason we had the $1 million contingency, which we've utilized part of. And then the other thing has been as we've got into the building design, we've realized that there were some FF&E issues and technology issues that weren't identified in that initial Mosley study way back when.
Does that account? I mean, I'm looking at the variance between the in the equipment section there. I mean, because that's double what we were told in April, from 820 for furniture equipment moving all the way to 1.6 million. What was the equipment? I mean, was the technology, was that originally incorporated into that number, or did we forget to do that for some reason?
I really, honestly, I don't know what the Mosley number included or didn't include. I errantly, I suppose, included that in the budget that I presented. I'd have to go back and try to find what the origination was of that $820,000 figure.
We knew that. Yes, that was the number that was in the Mosley study. For those, Mosley was an architect, an A&E firm that we brought in. Carol Wynn, 2007, 2008.
Probably they did the initial preliminary architectural review.
Right, they did the review of both the existing courthouse and of the jail facility, and came up with a preliminary budget. When Wiley & Wilson came on board, their primary focus was, let's make sure we've got the numbers right for the building, the construction of the building. So their number changed on the building construction, but we never asked Wiley and Wilson to do a detailed study of the FF&E. Once we got into it, again, because we knew we had some room, we adjusted those other things. The technology piece, I mean, we're basically setting up a brand new office for the sheriff's office with new computers. The wiring of the building, you know, had to be completely removed and redone. The telephone system's completely new. There's quite a bit in there that wasn't initially contemplated in that Mosley study.
In regards to the furniture issue, I know that we didn't end up using some of the new furniture that we had, or recently purchased furniture on the second and third floors of the courthouse. Are we utilizing that furniture to try to offset some of that cost on the sheriff's office?
To my knowledge, we've got everything. We've got quite a bit in storage that we're going to go through to make sure we can utilize any of that before we order new.
And I appreciate the sheriff's department. I know that they used a lot of inmate labor to get a lot of that furniture out of there, and hats off to them because it saved a lot of taxpayer money. But I was just wanting to check on that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Rob.
My next slide is just some of the milestones on the project. You know, I mentioned the notice to proceed on May the 9th. The demolition began on May the 13th and was completed on October 22nd. They actually, you know, they started the new HVAC work and the new structural steel work in July. The interior framing began in October. You know, they started framing the exterior walls in November. They delivered the major mechanical equipment just before Thanksgiving. You know, I don't know if you may have seen the cranes flying that onto the roof of the new building. They started the brick technically just before Christmas, but they only ran a little bit to get above grade to where they could set up some scaffolding. So technically the brick has started, but it's not continuing at this time because of the cold temperatures. And then I mentioned a little earlier that they did start the roof on the 16th of January. A couple of coordination issues with the existing facilities. There's a little bit of work inside the new courthouse mechanical room and the tunnel, and that is nearly complete at this point. And I think it's, you know, we've been able to do that successfully without any interruption to the new courthouse. I don't think that they would have known it was going on if we hadn't told them. And then the new emergency generator goes in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, and we haven't started that work yet. And that'll be in the spring. There's some excavation work to that. And the issues, the biggest issue that we have now is an electrical coordination study. What this is it's the contractor basically goes through a process where they verify the electrical design of the building. And because of some of the electrical changes, that was a little bit delayed, and there may be a future change order requesting both time and cost to sort that out. And then I have a few pictures. Oops, no, I don't. Pending items. I mentioned the furniture, and actually today we received the preliminary draft of the bid documents, so we're about ready to be able to put the furniture package on the street for bidding. And now I have a few pictures. This is what the building looked like on October 18th. This was about the time that the demolition was completed. You can see that you know, the old exterior tan brick is all gone. You can actually see some of the new structural members. You can see some diagonal members on the side parallel to Main Street. That's some of the new seismic bracing that went in. This picture was taken Friday. This is what it looks like, you know, right now. You know, this was looking from across Franklin Street. The blue is the air barrier. You've had some questions about that. That's basically a waterproofing of sorts to keep the building dry. And this is just the backside angle. You can see some of the interior framing and some of the ductwork there. And some steel studs inside. This is on the second floor. This is taken inside the new multi-purpose room in the sheriff's office. And this is on the first floor in the back of the building. And that's all I have. I don't know if you have any more questions.
Any more questions or comments from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron, for bringing us up to date. Well, next item is the public address section. We have no one signed up, but if you haven't signed up and would like to speak, you can speak at this time. Please come to the podium, state your name and address. You have 5 minutes and address all comments to the board. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Bill, Mr. Brown, and everybody on the dais. I'm Jack Selkowitz, I live on High Rock, the Lord and Pilot, and it was just a quick question on the presentation that was just made by Bob. Since some of these equipment costs are going to be shared in the 911 unit, are any of our other agencies going to be financially responsible for picking up part of it?
Yes.
That was all I was going to ask.
Yes, and I know we don't normally answer questions, but part of the cost associated with the 911 floor will be shared with the jurisdictions in the form of a rent payment.
Anyone else?
Phyllis Albritton, 1003 Highland Circle in Blacksburg, Virginia. And I just cannot thank you enough. This has meant more than you'll ever know. Working with you all has been a real pleasure. Getting to know you has been a deep pleasure. And I appreciate everything that you all do for this community, especially for our schools. You all are really amazing, and I can't thank you enough for your commitment to the future. Thanks. And
thank you.
This is very special.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close our public address session. Addendum, I guess we do have.
Yes, sir, we do have one item for addendum to add to the consent agenda, and that's an amendment to the county's compensation and classification plan.
We probably need a motion and a vote to add it, right?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call to add this to our consent agenda? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Perkins? Aye. Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is into work session. Need a motion to go into work session.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
7 ayes.
The two items that will be discussed is the FY 2015 budget revenue estimates and the proposed ordinance for kennels. I guess some of the money people will come up here, I guess.
Money people.
Okay, Mark.
Money people.
Yeah.
Mark's got on his tie, so he must be presenting.
Good evening, my name is Mark Magruder. I'm the budget manager for the county. Before I get into the presentation, I have some color copies, if anybody on the board wants any.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I like to write on.
Yeah.
Because I'm using paper tonight.
Okay, and tonight I'm going to give you an update on the budget for fiscal year 2015.
Thank you.
And for the most part, I'm going to talk to you about revenue. And just give you a little background information. County revenue falls into two categories, undesignated revenue and designated revenue. The difference really is whether or not that revenue is restricted or unrestricted. Undesignated revenues are unrestricted revenues, which means that basically they can be used for any purpose, whereas designated revenues are restricted revenues or earmarked for a specific purpose and can only be used for that purpose. And to give you an idea of the county's total revenue structure, about 87% of the county's revenue is undesignated, and as a general rule, three categories drive 95% of all of our revenue growth. And that's real estate, our personal property taxes, and sales and use tax. The designated portion makes up about 13% of our county revenue. Just to kind of give you an idea of what it looked like in prior years, when I started here 10 years ago, about 80% of our revenue was undesignated and 20% was designated. And what has happened is, as time has gone on, the state has pulled back. They're not giving you as much money as they had previously done. And so more local dollars are being put in the budget to cover the state shortfalls. Kind of give you an idea of where we are at for fiscal year 15. Our normal growth pattern is about $1 to $2 million in revenue growth per year. This year, we're actually on the lower side of that, and I'll explain into some detail while we're there. But our undesignated revenue growth for fiscal year 15 is estimated to be about $1 million. You can see that the bulk of that revenue is in real estate, about $400,000. We have a shortfall in personal property motor vehicle, and I'll talk more in detail about that in a few minutes. We're actually going to have a hole which we'll have to backfill, so we have a shortfall of $500,000 there. Growth in business furniture and fixtures, about $200,000. And then other current property, which is other categories in the personal property categories, of about $400,000, and sales and use tax of about $500,000. That gives us about $1 million in revenue growth going forward. Real estate is our single largest category of revenue. We generate about $60 million. And to kind of give you an idea of where we're headed and where we've been with real estate revenue, I put together a chart here that shows the land book history since fiscal year or calendar year 2008. And you can see the increase in value since 2008. And you can see in 2008 we had $176 million in growth in 1 year. And if you look at our recent years from 2012 through 2015, we're nowhere close to those numbers. And in the past, we were generating somewhere close to at least $100 million in new growth per year. And right now, we're hovering around about half of that. And so when we hit our real estate peak in 2008, we were at $176 million. Actual came in 2012 was $27 million. And 2013, $49 million. 2014, $56 million, and we're looking at about another $50 million for 2015. To put this into perspective about how much revenue we would generate, if we were at the 2008 level at $176 million, with our current tax rate, we would generate about $1.3 million in growth. But because we're not seeing those construction levels like we were back in 2008, we're only looking at about $423,000 in revenue growth. So you're losing nearly $1 million in growth just by the fact that we're not getting the same level of construction growth as we had in prior years. Talk a little bit about our personal property. The assessed value for the 2013 personal property book, just in motor vehicles, was less than what we had estimated in the current year. the growth that we had in the prior year was 31.5 million. In other words, we reported $31.5 million on the personal property book in growth from one year to the next. Based on national sales growth, it was estimated that we would see between 7 and 8% in growth in motor vehicle sales over the prior year. If that had actually happened, we would have had $34 million in additional value. Unfortunately, that did not happen. I'm going to show you a chart on the next page that shows you what actually happened. We found out that there was $7 million in one-time monies that were linked to the construction that was being conducted on I-81. That was removed from our base. And for whatever reason, U.S. automakers were showing double-digit sales growth year over year this year, and they've had record years in this year, but for whatever reason that did not materialize in Montgomery County. And I'll show you exactly what our growth looked like. Again, I went back to calendar year 2007 just to give you a picture of what the value structure looks like, and you can see that depending upon the year we're getting somewhere between 15 and upwards of $30 million. So in 2012 we had $31.5 million with a projected 7 to 8% growth pattern going forward into the next fiscal year. And as you can see, we only picked up $6 million. Now with the automakers reporting record years, why that did not materialize, I do not know. But if you were trying to trend this stuff out, you would think, okay, we picked up $30 million in a previous period, and they're estimating 7% growth on top of that. In actuality, Ford and GM reported double-digit numbers in growth patterns, and for whatever reason that did not materialize. Now this is not something that hasn't happened in the past. If you looked in 2009, we had a $33 million drop in the value on the personal property book, and that was due to an oversupply of used vehicles on the market. And so anytime you have an oversupply of vehicles, supply and demand, value drops because of the oversupply. So again, this is a particularly hard category to estimate going forward, but we estimated that we would get 30 million based on the evidence out there and what the trends look like, but that did not materialize. That's creating that $500,000 hole in our revenue going forward because we just didn't get that revenue.
Mark. Excuse me, Mark.
Yes.
On that previous slide, is there any sense, or do you have any idea, is this a regional issue, or is it just Montgomery County? Like any sense, Newark Valley, Roanoke Valley?
No, I mean, if you went back and you looked at the sales in our area, I mean, they were up. And so I'm not exactly sure if it had something to do with NADA's valuation of the underlying book value, in other words, how all the vehicles fared as a result, because anytime that you have, oversupply of vehicles, or you have, things indicated when we were looking at this that there was a limited supply of used vehicles on the market. So two things we were expecting. One, we were going to get the new sales growth, and the fact that some people were not selling their vehicles and there was a limited supply of used vehicles would actually increase the base because those vehicles were out there and not being on the market to be sold. So there was two things that we sort of were hedging our bets on. We thought, okay, $30 million seems reasonable and we should probably get more than that. But I don't necessarily think it's a regional thing. I just think that sometimes you can't look at national patterns and apply them to what's going on here locally.
Thank you.
All right, so what's the revenue look like going forward? Based on our current growth patterns, for our revenue to increase at the rate of inflation, or the rate of inflation plus population, generally a tax rate increase is needed just about every year. And over the last few years, the county has experienced and continues to experience less construction growth. We saw that in real estate. We're not at the 2008 level where we were collecting $176 million in new construction growth on the land book. We're only seeing, $50 million in that area. So we're not seeing the same growth patterns, even though the recession is supposedly over. We're still not seeing those pre-recession numbers coming in. And then we're still seeing motor vehicle value swings with the used and new vehicles. We saw that in 2009 when we lost $33 million on the personal property book. And then again this year when we're reporting record numbers of new vehicle sales and we're still not pulling in the value. So to help balance the budget over the past several years, the county has eliminated and frozen positions. We've deferred operating requests. We've maximized our revenue projections. We eliminated the Revenue Stabilization Fund last year. We changed the method of valuation on motor vehicle personal property from loan value to trade value. And we've increased the real estate and personal property taxes. And those are the things that we've done thus far to sort of address some of these things that we're experiencing and continue to experience as we have not seen the economy recover to where we were in 2008. The next slide shows you a detailed breakdown of all of our individual revenue categories. And what you can see here is the growth pattern in real estate, that $500,000 shortfall that we've talked about in personal property. And then again, you see some growth in sales and use tax, and the total increase over all categories is just under $1 million. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the governor's budget and things that were highlighted in that. What we do know is that there's increased state funding for schools, and that's estimated at $2.7 million. There is additional funds that have been included in the proposed budget for constitutional officers, funds to support increasing the compensation board's entry-level salaries for sheriff's deputies and deputy court clerks. What we do know is that the county's entry-level salaries are significantly higher than what the comp board authorizes, and so how that will be applied and how much revenue we will get off of that is not yet known. But we should have a better idea once we get a little further along in the state's budget process. So where are we today? So far, we have $3.6 million in total requests by the county departments. That includes 9 additional positions. As we just talked about, I have $1 million in potential revenue growth. That results in a shortfall of $2.6 million. One thing I wanted to highlight here is that there are certain things that the county has either mandated or obligated themselves to address in the upcoming fiscal year. One of those is a regional jail. That's going to cost about $700,000. We have increases in our fringe rates. VRS rate changed from 10.51% to 13.31%. We have increases in group life. We have increases for fire and rescue insurance. We have lease space at the magistrate's building that we have to address, and utility costs for the public safety building, which should become operational in the fiscal year. So just in things that we have obligated ourselves to do, we have about $1.4 million in things that we absolutely have to address in the next fiscal year, and we only have $1 million in revenue to cover that at this point. So we have about a $400,000 shortfall just to address the things that we have obligated ourselves to do. There's a few other issues that we will need to address. The 911 authority. Costs depend on the number of positions and the funds that will need to be transferred from the sheriff's office. And then the school's budget request is not in these numbers. Our next steps, we have the presentation of the proposed school budget on February 10th. The county will come back with a proposed budget on March 3rd. March 17th, the board will need to establish an advertised tax rate and budget, and then we will have a public hearing on the tax rate and the budget on April 3rd. And then we're set to adopt the budget on April 14th. And that concludes my presentation. If you all have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, Mr. Creed.
I got one. If you turn back to 13, I mean to page 3.
Okay.
You know, it may be my math is just wrong, but when I add that column of figures up, I come up with $2 million instead of one.
Four. That's $1 million.
You're not adding that million that's in the text. It's $1 million, and then it's those 5 bullet points that add up to equal
Well, the 5 bullet points are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet points. It's $2 million.
Plus one.
One's a
One of those
decrease.
is
One's a
negative.
decrease.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, the second one.
Okay, if it's a negative $500,000, you still got $1.5 million.
No, but if you're counting as a positive, when you were adding it up, that would have put you to 2, but if it goes as a negative, it's projected as a 1.
Yeah, if you look at the personal property motor vehicle, that's a negative $500,000, and then the sales tax is a positive $500,000. They net out to 0, and then you have 4 and 4 is 8, and 2 is 1.
Mark, could you show that slide on there?
Oops, there it goes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you take the negative 0.5 and the positive 0.5 and they net each other off, that makes a 0. So they net each other off. Then you have 2 0.4s, which would be 0.8, and a 0.2, which then gets you to 1.
Somehow I'm still not understanding that. If you had not had the personal property a negative, if that had been a positive 0.5, how much would it have been? Would that have been $2 million?
Yes. $1 million and a
You take
half.
out a 0.5 off of $2 million.
No, but if positive, it's $1 million swing because you're going from a negative $500,000 to a positive, so that would be $1 million swing. That's why it looks that way on paper. I can see what you're saying, but it's a $500,000. It's really $1 million swing because you're going to a negative to a positive.
And what those 5 bullets represent are increases or decreases over the current year. So, you've got 4 increases: the real estate, business, furniture and fixtures, current property, and sales taxes. Those 4 are an increase of $1.5 million over the current year. Then personal property is a decrease of $500,000 over the current year. So the net's $1 million increase.
Okay. One other question, and I got it a while ago, and well, I'll get that when it's my turn. I'm good.
Other questions, comments?
Just for the public's knowledge, the $700,000 jail increase, that's due to additional use. We're billed as how many inmates that we have at the regional jail, correct?
That's correct.
And everybody pays their share: Roanoke County, City of Salem, Franklin County, and us.
That's correct.
And this is just another question. I was talking with Commonwealth's attorney over in Radford, and I know that from my experience of having defendants staying down at the Western Regional Jail for as much as 2 or 3 years, he was indicating that he has been successful in getting the state to pick up their inmates sooner. And it might be something that we want to talk with him about, and pushing the state to pick up inmates, not letting them stay 2 to 3 years, which increase our costs. It might be worth exploring.
That has been discussed. Supervisor Brown and I are on the Regional Jail Authority Board. That's been discussed at quite a few meetings. But it's really up to, we can't force the state to take them. We have to wait for the state to come get them.
And he was saying that there may be a code section that he was utilizing, and I don't, like I said, sometimes you just talk it over lunch or something like that, and I was like, well, what's your jail cost going up? And he indicated that he's been very successful. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe he's got a code section that we could refer to. I'm not saying it's a magic bullet, but it's worth a shot.
Well, we're putting a lot more people in there than what we originally had paid for. That's what cost us so much money. So if we have to pay the other people that are not using their share of it.
We are by far and away now the largest user of that jail.
And, that's a big dollars when you start paying them for theirs.
Okay, where are we now? No more questions on the budget revenue estimates, so we'll move on to, I think this might be Mr. McMahon's topic, proposed ordinance, kennels, and talk about the
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
housing of doggies.
There's a couple problems that we've been facing lately. One is a zoning matter, which deals with kennels, and then the other issue is dealing with the adverse effects of in residential districts of households having too many dogs, and the adverse effect is on the neighbors, either with noise or smell. And so to talk about the kennel thing first, the only laws that we have locally restricting the amount of dogs is if it's a commercial kennel. And the problem we have from a zoning perspective is proving what is commercial and not commercial. And what we found is that some people are operating what I would say is a commercial kennel in residential districts without a special use permit, which is required. In fact, they can't even do it in a residential district, but they're operating them. And it's very hard from a zoning perspective to prove the commercial part of it, because what they're saying is, oh, we're just adopting, we're keeping these dogs, we're taking care of them, but then they got 20 dogs in there. And there's an adverse impact on the neighborhood, and so there's that problem, where it'd be much easier from a objective point of view if we could just show, if you have so many dogs, then you have to be a kennel or you can't have them at all. And so the other problem is like what's happened at Mudpike recently, where the person had up to 17 or 20 dogs at one time. They now have 13 dogs, but they can have as many as they want so long as they're taking care of the dogs. There's nothing we can do about it, except for maybe under the noise ordinance or under the welfare statutes of the dogs being kept. And so what this ordinance that you see before you is a proposal, is what it's planning to do is restrict, or propose to restrict, how many dogs people can have in residential districts. What it says, you can have up to 5. You can't have more than 5. And that would not count people who have puppies. So if we wouldn't count dogs that are under 12 weeks old. So you could have 5 dogs, and if you have a litter, you wouldn't count the puppies until they're after 12 weeks old. And what it says is, currently what it says is that you can have more than 5 by right in A1, but I think we need to maybe look at that again. And then you can also in C1 have more than 5. However, in residential, you can't have more than 5. And then we tweaked the kennel definition of, if you're a commercial enterprise, you can't have more than 2. You can't have 2 or more if you're operating a commercial without getting a special use permit. And there's nowhere in the county where is a kennel allowed without a special use permit. So that's the purpose of this ordinance. We kind of talked about it a little while ago, maybe a couple years ago, year and a half ago. There wasn't much interest in pursuing it, but then we've had some problems lately with people, having a lot of dogs in residential districts, even in A1 and small lots of A1. I mean, our A1 size, minimum lot size is 1 acre, and we do have some neighborhoods that are A1 zoned. So we might want to look at tweaking that a little bit and restricting how many they may have in those type of zonings of A1. We're not looking at the big farm areas. They can keep as many as they want. It's really the impact or negative impacts we're seeing on neighbors. There's nothing we can do about it unless we enact this. The town of Blacksburg currently, I know I looked today, they allow up to 4 dogs in residential, and that's it. So you can't have more than that. We ran this by the animal, what's the group called?
Friends of Animals.
Friends of Animals, to make sure we weren't causing any problems with people who foster animals, foster dogs, and he didn't think we would. He thought allowing up to 5 would not curtail fostering, because, and he said in almost every case, it's someone who's fostering isn't taking any more than 5 anyway. And so And even if someone had up to 5 or 6 for a short period of time, we're generally not going to hear about it, you know. And it's the people that like happen on Mud Pike where they have 16 dogs, 18 dogs, and it creates a negative impact on the neighbors. I don't know if you have any questions or.
Is this going to include, if it does go through, somebody that already has the dogs? Are you going to grandfather them in, or?
That's a good question. Generally, possibly, yeah. But then once they get below that number, they wouldn't be able to go back up. Right. That's something we got to look at.
Like if a dog died or something, you couldn't.
Right. Yeah, they couldn't replace it. I mean, we could look at that, what effect that would have.
The one thing I'd like to keep in mind, we used to have rabbit beagles, and we probably have 6 to 8 rabbit beagles. Now we had a lot more acreage, and then at one point in time we had those. We had a bird dog, and we used to do a lot of hunting in my family. And I think about that, and the lot size, perhaps we can utilize that. So if I've got 20, 30 acres, you had mentioned big tracts of land. By right, and I would be able to. But if I've only got, I'm in A1 with only 1 acre. As long as we're giving flexibility to hunters and being able to have, because most people, if they have rabbit beagles, they have more than one. If they have coon dogs, they have more than one. And so those, I would want to keep in mind for that.
I mean, the purpose of this is try to eliminate the adverse impacts on the neighbors. If you have a large tract of land, there isn't going to be an adverse impact on a neighbor because it's a large tract of land.
That's great. Did we ever put into effect, I know I tried to get it passed one time and I can't remember whether it did or not, to where that if you had dogs or any kind of noise-making animals, that you would have to put the dogs, for instance, we'll take dogs right now, as close to your house as you would to your neighbor's house?
Yeah.
If it was kept outside?
Yeah, and I remember you brought that up and ended up not going anywhere. But what this ordinance puts in, when it talks about people who have, what this will address somewhat of what you were talking about, because we're proposing some use limitations on anyone who has exterior runs or pens, that they be kept, not less than 25 feet from the property line. So you're going to do setbacks to try to eliminate that problem that you were talking about previously. So we could even do more than 25 feet, but that's in there for that reason that you brought up earlier some months ago.
Now this happens to be dogs, and what I was talking about was dogs.
Yeah.
It kind of rhymes, but it doesn't get you there. But it seemed like to me that is something that I know a lot of subdivisions have gone to. I know the one that I built down in Shaw, that was one of the covenants. And it was that you wouldn't put an animal closer to your neighbor than you would yourself. And that only makes common sense.
The only thing is, if you've got a big farm and you start saying, and I think this is where we came out, I may have cattle that go over on your, my house may be, a quarter of a mile from where I've got running my cattle. So does that mean I can't run my cattle in my field? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, it means that you can't pen your dog on your neighbor's fence if they live right there beside of it. And also would mean you couldn't fence a mean bull there, I guess, for lack of, anything that would restrict that animal from getting away from that house. If he stood there and barked all night, I know what I'd do with it.
Well, but then you call the sheriff's department, you got noise ordinance, in regards to that. But what I'm concerned about, Gary, is that if we start looking at, you talked about the pens, you said mean bull. Okay. Bill's got a mean bull. Bill lives 300, 400 yards, his house is 300, 400 yards away. On a farm, that's not unrealistic. And that bull, that pen is the fencing in, and that bull is now closer. It's in 40 feet of my house. Well, does that mean you can't farm that land anymore by putting the cattle in there? And that's why I just want to make sure that, sometimes you have those unintended consequences. I don't want
it means you should be a good neighbor and not put your animals right up against somebody else's land. Right, they got to eat, sleep, and dry,
But most farmers put their fences on the property line. Maybe at least.
But they don't pin them up right there where they can't go out somewhere else.
And actually, padding doesn't usually, well, in this ordinance, doesn't include perimeter fencing.
Right, and so I want to be careful that we don't restrict people's right to farm.
No, I absolutely don't want to restrict the right to farm, but I would like to restrict where they can pen their animals up that's closer to my house than it is to their house. And I've got to put up with all the crap that comes with it, along with, you know, the hollering, and you got chickens or roosters, and they come out going, if I don't want to hear them, I shouldn't have to hear them.
But
if they're pinned next to me, now they're just as close to you, and you use them to wake you up or whatever it may be, then that would be fine. But it shouldn't be on me and not on you if it's your animal.
Well, I was just thinking of the Waldron Farm. Some of their barns are a lot farther away from their house, might be closer to one of their neighbors' houses. And we'd say, well, there's a pen there, there's a stock pen. Would that say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to pin those animals up?
I would hope it would have enough sense to make that something that wouldn't happen, that you would address that when you got into making an ordinance, that if you had 50 acres of land and you wanted to put it somewhere and it's still going to be 200 foot away from the nearest neighbor, you'd be fine.
I think, let me interrupt, I think that what I gather from listening to this conversation is that if this is the fence line, we're not saying that the dog can't run on its own property and run close to that fence line. Right. We're talking about, I'm pretty sure Gary's talking about if you have a pen or you have a cable or somewhere where you snap the dog up where it's his run or play area, that wouldn't be over close to the fence. That would be, 25 or so many feet away from your neighbor's side. Right, from your neighbor's side.
Your neighbor shouldn't have to put up with your stuff.
So I think that's what you guys are trying to get at. If I'm correct, I don't know.
That would make sense.
And then
that's what I'm saying. It makes too much sense to be any good. It's a problem. Something makes sense sometimes.
And then we've sort of got away from dogs and got on hogs and bulls and so forth. Other questions or comments?
Marty, is the next step to schedule this?
The next step would be have planning commission relook at it.
Yeah, they need to look at it.
Go through the process.
They definitely.
We're going to tweak it a little bit too, from what you see now.
Okay, let me get back up here.
Mr. Chair, I guess we're looking for consensus to
send it on
refer to the planning commission.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do we have consensus to send it on? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, we got consensus, and it's going to the planning commission. Need a motion to, unless there's some other comments or questions, motion to go out of work session.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll and go out.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Fix?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item, county attorney's report.
I have no report, Mr. Chair.
You sure?
I am.
Okay. County administrator's report.
The only item I have, Mr. Chair, is thank everyone again for your time on Saturday. I thought it was a very productive day, had good discussion on a number of topics, made a list of a number of things to follow up on and get back with you on, but certainly appreciate the time that you took on Saturday, and that's my report.
Okay. Get on down to our board members. Supervisor Perkins.
Okay. I only have one thing to say, and that is what I said when I left on Saturday, that I thought it was an excellent session. I think we should be scheduling more of those, simply because we were able to discuss and communicate, I think, in a better way, in a better manner, the items that we need to consider for the citizens. And I do apologize again for leaving early, but that couldn't be helped. So thank you again.
Okay. Supervisor Biggs.
Well, I just want to tell you that I went to the New River Valley Community Services meeting last Thursday, and it was probably the most productive meeting I've been to. This is my 3rd year on the board, and we are under Rosemary Sullivan is the interim executive director that came up through the system, and she and the executive committee, which is led by Robert Hiss, he's assistant county administrator in Pulaski County, did an excellent job of sort of reestablishing maybe how we would go about our meetings and what we might do there to really make them beneficial for everyone. And I went away from that meeting feeling so positive, just like on Saturday. And I really think things are going to sort of turn around there as far as us having the information we need to come back to you guys. I wanted to report that their annual audit went well. Their financial report went well. They've been struggling, but they have a little bit of a surplus right now, about $137,000 surplus, which was a good thing. I found out that the Montgomery County Public Schools had asked for some special help with student behavior, so they're going to be helping them. We're going to plan a board retreat. It's scheduled right now for April 26th. So I just wanted to report back that I get the sense that we're going to be moving along, and I think Montgomery County needs to appoint a member, right? Is that correct, Mr. Meadows? We're down one person or something?
I believe we've been down one member for a while on the...
It was, someone resigned that took Neil Turner's place. Is that what happened?
I'm going to have to check.
McPherson? Does that sound right?
Maria resigned, but I believe we appointed someone to fill her position.
Well, they have it listed still as a vacancy, so you might want to double check.
Wasn't that Ann?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have her listed, they have the other person, they still have us listed with a vacancy. So you might want to check.
We'll check.
And then the other thing I just wanted to know is, I saw Ms. Witt out there, and I know that some of the folks from the, the Ellett Creek Road have been attending different meetings, and I think our original plan was to have some kind of information come back in a work session, and I just wondered if we had a timeline on that, or is that something that's still in the air?
I guess it's still in the air because we haven't set any time to...
And when we would be doing something like that, they would be notified, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, because I know they've been coming to the meetings and they're probably wondering, why we're not talking about it or what's going to happen next. I just thought I'd ask. And that's it.
Did we decide we were going to...
Is there a deadline under that statute?
4 months.
4 months, okay.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. Vicki and I were looking the other day at future agendas. We did tentatively slide it to talk to you guys about bringing it back the last meeting in February. Thank you, Vicki.
Okay.
So something's got to be done, by the first March meeting at the latest.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
Okay. Just thought I'd check. Thank you.
That's for voting.
Supervisor Tuck.
I only have one item, and we were unable to go to the dialogue on race because of our meeting on Saturday. And but something happened, and sometimes it's the little things, and I didn't even think about it till Martin Luther King Day went by, and I was thinking about some of the changes that we've seen. And we elected an African American chair to this board. Now, I don't know, Bill, maybe you served as chair sometime before, but I would guess that that's the first time that that's happened. But here's what I thought I was really kind of proud to be a part of this body. Nobody was thinking about this is the first African American. They were thinking, Bill's a good man. We're going to vote for him. He's going to do a good job. We were judging him by the content of his character, not by the color of his skin. And what kind of progress that we've made over the years. You think in 1967, Loving v. Virginia, it was illegal for either race to marry and intermingle races. And we've got to this point where we don't even think about it in some ways. It just goes through. We just judge people by who they are. And while we're not where we want to be, we sure have come a long ways in these last 30, 40 years. And so it just struck me the other day, and congratulations on that accomplishment for you. But I felt like truly sitting on this board, none of it came to our mind. It didn't even dawn on me until I was just happened to be thinking about it. And so congratulations to you, Bill.
Supervisor Gabriel.
Yeah, just very briefly, I attended the first Economic Development Commission meeting of the year on the 23rd. Not a lot occurred at that particular meeting. Nancy Hardwick from AirPro presented, but and there were some new people, myself included, so there was a little bit of orientation. But I think more stuff will happen next month, and that is the only thing I really want to report out of that is on February 27th, tentatively, which is the fourth Thursday, during the EDC's regular meeting time. There's going to be a presentation about the skills gap analysis that's been done, specifically as it relates to Montgomery County.
Right.
And so you all will be receiving invitations to attend that presentation. I think they're planning on trying to have it here, maybe in multi-purpose room or something like that. Invitations, I believe, will also be sent out to like Blacksburg Town Council, Christiansburg Town Council, and all the relevant bodies around. So it should be a very interesting presentation, and so please mark your calendars for that. Usually, I think they're planning on meeting at 11:30 on that Thursday. It'll be about an hour-long meeting, an hour and a half. And that's all.
Thank you. Mr. King, Supervisor King.
I just have one thing. I want to thank Craig for helping me out here. We got a few issues out on Old Sirewood Road. We're trying to get them people happy, and I just want to tell Craig how much I appreciate him helping me to try to straighten them out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for making me aware of them, and we're making staff aware of them, and we'll get them taken care of.
Question is, have you got them happy yet?
Have you got what?
Have you got them happy yet?
No.
Oh, okay. That's the question.
Working hard on that.
Working hard on it.
We're working on it.
Okay.
We need some warm weather to fix part of it.
Yeah. Supervisor Creed.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot, but I want to go back to that funny and fuzzy math
That fuzzy math?
that we was talking about. I do understand what you're talking about, but our big problem is that, you can't spend money you don't have. So, if I was to take that 0.5 million that we're not going to get, and then I was to take the sales tax, and we suddenly didn't get that either, that'd be 1 million. So we just don't count the other and we'll break even? Now, 0.4 is no good, the 0.2 is no good, and the other 0.4 is no good. So we don't count any of those, even though they equal to $1 million. No, they equal for about $1 million.
I apologize if the slide's confusing, but if you go back into the detail of the next couple of pages beyond that, what we're looking at is a net revenue growth of $1 million. Now, maybe the way we showed it on the slide's confusing, but the numbers in the pages that follow that show that the net revenue growth that we're looking at for the upcoming year is right at $1 million. So I apologize if that slide's confusing.
It's not so confusion, but if you knew how to use it and you give somebody kind of a trading fixture, you can make it rough on them. I like to play a little poker, brother.
You done, Mr. Craig?
Well, that's what, didn't President Reagan call that voodoo financing or something?
We're not doing voodoo financing.
Referring to President Reagan.
Oh, I can do it.
Did you say voodoo financing?
Voodoo economics.
No, we're not doing voodoo economics, but I can tell you we've got more needs than we've got revenues right now. That's the whole basis of that. You're here to me, yes.
Okay. What I'd like to say is...
sorry, can I add one thing?
Yes, you sure can.
Just since we're talking about needs, one thing that I've heard, and I don't know if we're planning on addressing this, is that one thing we've kind of suspended over the last few years is any new outside agency requests. And we've just kind of cut them off. And every once in a while, we kind of try to add something in or something like that. I mean, I would like maybe during this budget process just to review existing agency requests and see if we need to continue supporting some things and maybe some things need to be added or some things need to be taken out. Because I know, for example, like we gave a little extra money to Christiansburg Institute last year, and I know there are probably some other places that might be demonstrating some need. So I wonder if it's worth taking a little bit of time as a board to kind of think about those outside agencies and what we might need to fund, instead of just kind of passing over them what we've just doing what we've done in the past for the same agencies.
The local government, the area managers are meeting all day next Monday over at the PDC office. And matter of fact, I think we start at 8:30 and we finish at 4:45. And between that time, every 15 minutes, we've got one of the agencies coming in to present their budget information. We usually try to reach a consensus as a group, but I'll be glad to come back and make sure we go through a close review of that, and because that's ultimately your call. I mean, they present the information to us because, like I said, if they came in here, that's an all-day meeting. But
sure.
Well, may I just ask a question about that?
Yes, go ahead.
Do the same people, like Christiansburg Institute, do they go to you all on that one-day meeting, or is it or Smithfield Plantation, or Rosa Peters Park, or some of those?
Some of them do. What happened last year with Christiansburg Institute is, again, they were a new agency, and the managers group didn't recommend adding any new agencies, but then they came to the board, and the board had that prerogative. And same thing this year. The instructions out to the group is the managers group that reviews those are not adding new agencies, but if there are new agencies that want to appeal to the board, they have the right to do that. We don't tell folks, no, you can't come to the board if you don't come to this meeting.
Okay, so can we have those as a part, the extra things we've given?
I'm a little confused. If new agencies contact us before this meeting, are they allowed to come to this particular meeting, or do we only meet with the outside agencies that we've previously funded during this all-day meeting?
During the all-day meeting, it's usually the one we've previously funded, if I understand that correct, Carol?
No, not necessarily. They're primarily the meeting with the joint managers are for agencies that serve all the New River Valley. Now, if it's a Montgomery County only agency, they generally don't come and do a presentation just for Montgomery County. So you're looking at like the Community Services Board that serves the whole New River Valley, and that's why you have all the managers there. But in terms of the package and the requests, there's a joint request package so that each jurisdiction's getting the same information. And so anyone who wants to make a request to all of the New River Valley group will have the opportunity to do that. And then if they want to do a presentation, whether we funded them before or Pulaski's funded them before or not, they're put on the schedule to give their presentation.
Okay, so just again, this is just so I thank you very much. This helps just so I understand the process. If a new agency approaches one of us and says we would like X amount of money for the next budget or something like that, and we pass it on to Greg or to you, what happens next? Is there a packet that they're sent so they can make a formal presentation, or
if the instructions are put together, and if they are on the list, asked to be on the list, or have been referred to one of us and are put on the list, they're sent a packet of information. Now, those packets, I guess I don't know what I'm doing, but whatever it is wrong. The packets probably went out the 1st of November and were due back in the end of December, I believe. But there is a process for that, yes, and they can request the packet, they can get that sent to them, they send it back in, and then they're contacted from there on in about if they're interested in doing a presentation at the joint meeting with all the managers.
Okay, thank you.
That's what we do.
I guess it answers it in a way.
You're not confused, are you? You confused?
No, I'm not confused.
Okay.
The Christiansburg Institute folks are going to come back to this
I know they will, but I was just thinking, would it be helpful if we knew the different agencies we had funded outside of what the managers do? That's my thing. When we get ready to talk about
Yes, ma'am. We can pull that together very easily, yes.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's about 22 degrees and and going down, and I don't have anything to report. And so any comments? Or adjourn.
Thank you.